former Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley officially said she is going to vote for Donald Trump. What's your reaction?
Well, it was very predictable because she, by many people's scorecards, stayed in the presidential nomination derby a few states too long. I mean, I think after New Hampshire, the expectation was that she would drop out. She didn't, as she faced down what became a resounding defeat in her home state to Donald Trump. And now she's trying, I think, to figure out, is there a life after this failed attempt at president, looking either in 24 or 28. Here are the issues for Nikki, okay? The words she just offered, what I think has to be considered a tepid endorsement of the president. Remember, it wasn't too long ago, Brittany, where she was talking about the president, the former president, as chaotic, unhinged, a disaster. These are all made for television comments that the Democratic Party will use, you can assure yourself, will use in any campaign where she would be a part of a ticket with Donald Trump. She, in her endorsement language, she basically said, Biden's a disaster. Trump isn't perfect, but it's better than the disaster. That's not a resounding endorsement, I think, that of the former president. And I don't think that generated any particular goodwill within the Trump tent. So did she have to do it? Probably. Did it preserve options for 28? Possibly, though I still think the things from 24 may come back to haunt her in any attempt at a comeback in 28. But I don't think that what we just heard from Nikki Haley, even though she represents, Brittany, the positives of gender on the ticket, diversity, she's been vetted because she's run for president before, not to be, minimized. That's very important. She has incredible experience. She has name ID. You check all those boxes. What she doesn't check is what she just said publicly for all to hear about the former president. And I don't think anything she just said about voting for Donald Trump over the disaster of Joe Biden is going to score her the kind of points that would make her a legitimate contender for VP.
I want to talk about the trajectory of the relationship between Nikki Haley and Donald Trump. She was his UN ambassador in the Trump administration. She left on what seemed to be amicable terms. Then she ran against him for president this year, and that fight got especially gnarly. He called her bird brain. She said he was unhinged, like you said, that he wasn't qualified or fit to run for president. And if the line to endorse someone's right here, I mean, she barely tiptoed over it this week by saying, you're going to have to do a lot to persuade my voters. So what do you think he needs to do to persuade those voters?
Wow. It's a hard question to answer. I mean, if she could rewind the clock, remember, she comes out of the Trump administration. She comes out with very good marks, I think, from the former president and from the people around him. I think by most scorecards, she did a very, very good job in the United Nations, which is not an easy thing to do. She had all options in front of her. Then she writes the book, right? And suddenly she's starting to question certain things about Donald Trump. And of course, she also had said very publicly that she would not run for president if the former president was seeking a comeback. And she, of course, turned on that as well. So I think the history of all that makes it very difficult to understand, if you're advising Nikki Haley, how you stay kind of alive and vital politically, not just in 24, but looking ahead to the possibility of 28. I don't have the advice ready at hand, but I can tell you it's a difficult one because the record is now very full of what Nikki Haley has said very recently about her feelings of the former president.
And she was arguably Donald Trump's staunchest critic in that slew of Republicans running for president this year. And she said this before suspending her campaign in February, quote, "I feel no need to kiss the ring and my political future is of no concern." Is this essentially kissing the ring?
Well, the ring that would have been kissed, that was on the ring finger, is now somewhat hidden and is irrelevant. I don't think this is kissing the ring. This is doing something which you think is intellectually what you need to do to preserve options. But I think all of us, Brittany, frankly, kind of see this for what it is, as does the former president, which is why even though on the checkbox, that of people you would consider for VP, she check a lot of those boxes. The boxes she doesn't check, I think, are eliminators for her. However, with all that said, the former president has an amazing number of solid choices, Brittany, that he can entertain that would be measurably helpful to his chances in November. And that's something we should probably talk about.
We are going to get into those in just a moment. I do want to talk about Donald Trump's comments to a reporter last night. He said this about Nikki Haley. We had a nasty campaign. It was pretty nasty, but she's a very capable person, and I'm sure she's going to be on our team in some form. Absolutely. You're saying you don't think she's going to be VP. So where is that spot for her in the Trump administration should he win?
That's a great question. A lot of the people who are on the quote unquote VP list are auditioning for something. Yes, they would like to be considered very strongly for vice president, but think of all the other ways they could serve in a Trump administration. Clearly, I think that's where Nikki Haley would like to go. She'd like to find some place with Donald Trump after the elections that keeps her in the spotlight, that keeps her maybe growing back to where she used to be, which was a kind of a favorite of the party, the base and beyond. And she needs that to kind of think recharge her political relevance moving forward.